In this video, I want to go through a few of the join algorithm options in Power Query, specifically the LeftIndex and SortMerge option, and show a case here where it is inappropriate. I have two tables that each have 1,000,000 rows, and they're simply the values 1 through 1,000,000, and they have already been sorted. We can see in table B, it's the same thing. The only difference is that in table B, I called the column column2, because when you do Table.Join, you automatically append all of the columns from the second table, meaning you can have a conflict with names. We don't have to specify a join algorithm, but if we go look up the documentation for the algorithms by going into join algorithm type, we can see that the standard option is join algorithm.dynamic, which will do an inspection on the initial rows. It doesn't say how many rows that are, and it will look at metadata. It also doesn't say how it gets that, but maybe if your source is a SQL database, it can say that you have a primary key or some other information that I'm not aware of. In any case, the dynamic will then go through the options here based on some selection of your tables. This is then the standard option where we don't do anything, and that will be correct most of the times. But if you know something extra about the tables that might not be present in metadata, then you could add an algorithm. In the LeftIndex table, I've chosen to use join algorithm.LeftIndex, which says it goes through batches of your left table, and then it uses a batch, so that might be 10,000 rows or 50,000 rows. The documentation doesn't specify. Then it does a predicate-based query against the right table. And in English, that means it uses something similar to an SQL call, where it adds a where clause saying, hey, I grabbed the first 10,000 rows of column 1 on the left table, and I want to apply these as a filter on the right table. And then you get back a certain number of rows, and then it tries to do a join. And we can see it suggests that you do this when the right table is large. Ours has 1,000,000 rows. When the source supports folding with table.select rows, this is an Excel file which shouldn't support folding, but an SQL database might. And then if it contains few rows that are expected to match. In this case, all 1,000,000 rows match. And I wanted to include this because I wanted to show that you can end up with a poor selection if the algorithm is inappropriate, which it is in this case. Lastly, we have join.SortMerge. We can see the documentation. It performs a streaming merge, and I'll show that in a moment what that means. But basically, it assumes that both tables have been sorted on the keys, and it's efficient if that assumption is correct. And in my case, both of the columns are primary keys, meaning we don't have duplicates, and they have been sorted, which means the algorithm is appropriate. And basically, you can imagine that you have the two columns next to one another, and then the computer scans the left table and says, okay, can I find the match in the current row in the second table? It can, then these are joined. Then it goes to the next row. Well, 2 doesn't match 1, so I should go to the next row here. 2 matches 2, and then it keeps scanning downwards. And in this example table, I just have the values January, February, March. So this is a unique column, a primary key. And then I have a table here with multiple values in the month column. We can see this column hasn't been sorted. I have January, January, and January. And then when I try to do a join using the sort merge option, we can see that January matches to January, which gives value 1, and January matches to January, which gives value 2. Then February and February match. But then the fourth row, where we had January and 4, that is missing from our table because you can't go back up because it does this streaming operation. So we had January that matches January, then we have February that doesn't match January, so we go down to February. These two match, then we go down to January, and January doesn't match to February, but we're not allowed to go back up, so we have to go down. March doesn't match with January, so we go down in the right table, and then March matches with March. So the join algorithm sort merge is not appropriate because the tables haven't been sorted. In any case, we can now try loading the tables, and then we can see the performance differences. This isn't exactly the most scientific way to compare the times, but we can see how much data it loads and when it's done loading. We can see that sort merge is ahead, and it's done now, and join standard took a few seconds extra. And we can see that join left index is going to keep going because it has to scan the tables multiple times because it does this batch-wise search. So I'm going to stop now because it's already loaded 4 times the tables. When you have extra information about your tables, you can specify the join algorithms. You can't specify join algorithm in the NestedJoin function, which is a bit of a shame. You can see NestedJoin. There's no option to add an algorithm, so that means you have to expand all of the columns from the right table, but you can delete them afterwards. And also you'll need to make sure that there are no duplicate columns, otherwise you're going to have issues. In any case, that was everything. So, yep.